Come on, everybody. Hope everyone out there is doing well today. It's Dan again from high above downtown Kitchener in Ontario, Canada. And I'm going to tell a story today about what was known as West Montrose's darkest day. West Montrose is a small town about an hour and 45 minutes outside of Toronto, about 20 minutes from where I am here in Kitchener. And the darkest day for Montrose was a murder-suicide that saw 5 people die, a horrible death. This coming December 28th of 2022 will mark 75 years since this tragic event took place way back in 1947. As the thumbnail of this video explained, the tragedy from so long ago happened just steps from what is known as the covered kissing bridge in West Montrose. Built in the late 19th century, it spans 200 feet over the Grand River and is the only remaining covered bridge in Ontario, Canada. Nicknamed the Kissing Bridge because of the intimacy and privacy it offered its travelers. It is a prominent and recognizable feature in one of the most picturesque landscapes in Ontario. It is a tourist attraction, and as I've shown, has been used more than once in Hollywood movies. I'm willing to bet those Hollywood movie crews had no idea of the true life horror story that I'm about to tell, and I hope you will join me. Thanks very much. Just after Christmas, around midnight, on December 28th, 1947, neighbors in the small town of West Montrose, Ontario, heard gunshots. They assumed someone was hunting rabbits. Instead, 4 members of the Letson family were savagely murdered by one of their own. The tragic event happened at Hugh Letson's house, long since demolished. The victims included Hugh, his wife Mary, 44, and 2 brothers, Percy, 38, and Wilson, 43. Walter Letson, who was better known as Pat, was their cousin, who then turned the gun on himself. Investigation and reconstruction of the tragedy revealed that Pat Letson, 55, had been keeping company with one Eleanor Springer, 18 years old, a hazel-haired teenager who had quit school in grade 5 and frequently got into trouble for underage drinking, getting kicked out of bars, and drawing the affections of older men. Eleanor had apparently recently transferred her affections to Wilson Letson. Miss Springer had spent the past few days at the Letson house, and on the evening of December 27th, she had accompanied Mr. and Mrs. Hugh Letson along with Wilson and Percy to Kitchener, where they visited the Bridgeport Hotel for dinner and drinks. Pat was jealous and at home drinking alone with murder on his mind. A well-built laborer with little schooling, he did odd jobs around the village and for a time worked at the local sawmill. Pat was waiting in the garage with a shotgun when the group pulled into the driveway well after midnight. His cousin Wilson was gunned down first as he stepped out of the car. He died instantly and fell where he was shot. The others were ordered into the house where Pat murdered Mary, Hugh, and Percy in the living room. Pat held Eleanor captive throughout the night and most of the next day, asking the teenager if she wanted to join Mary. Springer had said she might very well have been his next victim if it hadn't been for Letson's elderly cousin, Alicia Pollock, 87, who came into the house from doing some chores in the barn and allowed her to escape. Soon after, Pat Letson turned the shotgun on himself. He locked the door on his cousin and sent him to the shed to fetch some coal. That's when he ended it. Alicia, who was partially blind and hard of hearing, told police he didn't hear the gun go off. After escaping the house, Springer ran to her home some distance away and told her father. He tried to borrow a neighbor's gun but was turned down. Instead, they called police. Pat Letson was found on the couch in the kitchen, a young puppy shivering on his knees. The double-barrel shotgun was still resting between his legs. An open box of shotgun shells nearby. Several cases of beer were scattered around the room. The Christmas tree was somehow untouched, but everything else, the chandelier, the walls, the windows, were shattered by the gun's blast and spattered with blood. That night, Springer recounted what happened. He was jealous. He threatened to kill me too, Springer told a reporter. People still talk about it, said West Montrose resident George Winfield, who was 10 years old at the time of the murders. Winfield lived across the street from the Letson house, and Pat Letson was once a boarder in his house. His father, George, discovered the bodies when he went into the house at the request of Letson's cousin, who didn't see the gunshot in Pat's chest and tried to wake him. What his father found that day stayed with him the rest of his life. It was dark when he went in. He sort of tripped over something and realized it was a body. He left and called police. The 4 victims were buried in a shared grave in the Winterbourne Presbyterian Cemetery just outside of West Montrose. Only Hugh and Mary's name are etched on the small, simple stone. The graveyard seems quite run down and unremembered. Pat Letson was buried separately at the United Church Cemetery in West Montrose. For years, he had no grave marker until several of his cousins decided his final resting place should be identified. He was given a small footstone in the corner of the cemetery. While Eleanor Springer had no role in the killings, the teenager was treated like a criminal. She was arrested by police and charged with being incorrigible. Prosecutors threatened to send her to a home for juvenile young women. The Crown Attorney at the time said she was charged for her own well-being. Eleanor moved away soon after the shootings and went on to have as normal a life as possible. She married, changed her surname to Arnold, and started a family. She died in 2005 in Brantford, Ontario, at the age of 76. She left behind 4 children and many grandchildren and great-grandchildren.